Now we have a few minutes for questions. If anyone would like to ask a question either to the Secretary of State or to Jeff, please raise your hand, just say who you are.
Thanks. A question for the Minister, Zoe Corbyn from the Times Higher Education Supplement. First of all, I just wondered what exactly is new money that you're announcing. You say there's sort of 220 million a year by 2010. What's the base you're starting from? And also, in terms of development money sort of flowing into UK universities, is there any earmarked specifically to go overseas rather than to the UK universities? And if so, how much?
Okay, do you want to take 2 or 3? And then
Okay, we'll take 2 or 3.
Hannah Devlin from Research Fortnight magazine. This is for Dr. Alexander as well. You mentioned that there's a tension between the requirements for development and for academia to publish new work. Is there evidence that this is really the best way to spend money to go toward development? And could you give a few examples of projects that have really helped in this respect?
Why don't I deal with the questions in reverse order? Firstly, in terms of research, we actually get very good rates of return on applied research, and there's quite a lot of evidence to substantiate that. In terms of some of the specific examples that I could give you, I would think of the drought-resistant maize in Africa, which has helped increase harvest by 20 to 50%, to which DFID contributed research support. In Tanzania, better water harvesting practices, which are helping farmers in semi-arid areas to adapt to climate change. And also in the Seychelles, there's been a lot of research conducted in the revenue of tuna fish licensing, which has actually led to a very significant uplift. Previously unregulated fishing in that part of the world was losing significant revenue yield. So in that sense, we are confident that there's a good rate of return that can be secured on the investment, but it's equally important, as I sought to do in my remarks, to emphasise the importance of the application of that research, because we want to make sure that it's focused on exactly the kind of development outcomes that we would like to see. In relation to the first question that was put to me by another colleague from the press, there is new money for each of the new research themes that I identified today. The detailed business plan will be on the DFID website, we would expect within about 6 weeks. So in that sense, you'll be able to go through the detail in terms of the work that we're actually doing. And as is well known, DFID research has been untied for a number of years, and in that sense it will be open to southern-based institutions to apply for support along with other institutions as well.
Question at the back.
Thank you. Steve Bass, International Institute for Environment and Development. To the Secretary of State, congratulations on an excellent strategy. It's been a very consultative process, and as far as I can see in this short time, the results really do seem to reflect the needs of developing countries and indeed the opinions of researchers. So an excellent strategy. Question, in the past, DFID itself has not been very good at using the results of the research that it sponsors. So what are you going to have in place to ensure that the research informs DFID?
Trevor Nichols, Chief Executive of CAB International. One of the themes that's come through very consistently is the disrepair in extension services, agricultural extension services around the world. And the question really is for both DFID and LIDC, I think, in terms of plans really to help restore some of that extension network, which was once very powerful around the world.
I'm Frances Stewart, Director of one of the DFID-funded research centres, CREES. And I too would like to add my congratulations to what I think will be a very exciting programme. But I'd like to comment that our experience in working with partners overseas and trying to develop capacity is that we are hugely handicapped by the state of disrepair of the universities, particularly in Africa where we've worked. And I think just research money is not going to do the trick. So I'd like to urge the Secretary of State to also put money into building up the universities and do that on quite a big scale, so we really can work with them.
Thank you very much.
Let me deal with each of those in turn. To Steve's question, notwithstanding the level of consultation that we've had, it's not coincidental that the broad themes I set out today reflect emerging priorities of DFID's own work, and in that sense there's not a significant divergence between the themes of our research work and the ongoing policy development work of the department. And in that sense, we are working hard to ensure that in those areas of identified priorities, for example, growth or recognising the interrelationship between the challenges of climate change and development. So in that sense, I'm comfortable but not complacent as to the challenge that we have within DFID in ensuring that we can apply that research effectively in our own work. On the second point, in terms of agricultural extension services, I mean, this is something which a number of people are looking at the moment. I had a useful conversation with the President of the World Bank, Bob Zellick, on how to make more effective the operation of agricultural markets in Africa. And one of the pleas he was making was for strengthened farmers' associations. He said actually those themselves have proved to be highly effective in ensuring better access to information. So in that sense, agricultural extension services potentially have a role to play. But I have to say one of the most interesting and innovative areas at the moment is the development of mobile phone technology in terms of providing real-time information to smallholder farmings in terms of the operation of what previously been often very inefficient markets which have been prejudicial to their interests. Francis, on the third point, one of the burdens of office in DFID, I have to say, is there is always more identified need than there is resource, even on a day when I'm able to make an announcement of this scale in terms of research. So in that sense, I wouldn't diminish the significance of what you describe in terms of the challenge of building the higher education sector within Africa. But I think we need to be careful to protect ourselves from the hubris of presuming that we alone can solve every problem. Partnership has very much been the theme of the day today. And while we have very serious commitments in terms of education and in health within Africa, I think there is a role for many organisations far beyond DFID to build the capacity of the higher education sector in Africa, and that was why I was so excited by some of the work that's been set out in terms of this new centre in particular. I'm not saying it's easy, I'm not saying there's a straightforward solution, but there will always be greater need than there is resource, but I've heard what you've said in terms of the needs of some of these institutions.
Jeff, could I bring you in here? I think one of those questions at least was addressed to you.
Thank you, Andy. I think it was a question from Kavi about agricultural extension, a subject near and dear to my heart and to Kavi's, I know, is about empowerment. And it's about empowerment of farmers who learn from others, from trainers, who will train the trainers. That's where perhaps universities have a challenge in the developing world. Well, hopefully universities in the UK can come to do that. So it's a long chain from LIDC to agricultural extension, and it involves many players. Let
me take one final question from our colleague at the front here.
Keith Lewin from the University of Sussex. I also direct a DFID Research Centre. Like everybody else, I greatly welcome the initiative on the research strategy, but I ask this question. What steps will you take to avoid the probability that the release of this additional funding for research will increase the brain drain of talented researchers from sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia?
I have a sister who's worked in development for 25 years, and the weekend that I became the Secretary of State for International Development, I had a long phone call with her. She works in Canada. One of the things she said was, don't succumb to the mindset that you are so blessed with such excellent research facilities in the United Kingdom that you don't have a lot to learn from developing countries. And I think it's a fair challenge to us that we need to continually be looking at ways that we don't simply build on the excellence that we've heard about today in terms of the development centre, but are looking at ways of establishing new partnerships and facilitating the development of these kinds of centres of excellence in the South as well.
Strategy very well received.